Hello and welcome to the garden. Well, we're at the end of July now, and for some weeks we've been pulling crops out. So the broad beans, the peas, the shallots and garlic, they're all gone, and the onions will follow fairly soon. As soon as we get a few days of nice warm sunny weather, I will start to lift those and get them drying. But that is now opening up space in the garden which I can replant with crops for the late autumn and winter. So they're mostly leafy greens, some endive and chicory, and then lots of brassicas. And I'm going to start that process today. So the first thing I'm going to do is just rake over this bed here, which had some of the shallots in, and then I've got some chicory ready to plant out. So these fellows are whitloof chicory, also known as Belgian endive, and yeah, nice little plants, but it's time I got those in the ground. In fact, these have been ready to go, to be honest, for a few weeks. I know that's what I usually say on these videos. I am usually running a few weeks behind. Just debating here whether to put 3 or 4 across here. How many have I got? Well, I've got 12, so 3 rows of 4 or 4 rows of 3, either would do. I think I'll give these a little bit of space and just put 3 across here. Yeah, that would be all right. So I'll pull off any tatty leaves down the bottom that aren't going to be particularly useful. Well, they're nice little plants. We've got plenty of root down the bottom, but yeah, they're not bad at all. Give them a good firming in. Yeah, get rid of that. So next I've got half a dozen cabbages. This is a Savoy type, and this is my first batch of these for this year. I've got some more seedlings that I need to pot up shortly, and they will then follow these later in the year. So I'm going to put these in another patch that had shallots earlier in the year. I'll give that a little bit of a rake and then get planting. Well, I think I can fit 3 across the bed here. It's possibly better with 2. I don't know, but 3 should be fine. So it's my usual method for these. I'll take out a larger planting hole than I need. And I've got a mixture of fish blood and bone, lime, and some chicken manure pellets. And I'm just going to work that into the soil in the hole. I don't always do this, but it's not a bad mixture. I don't want to set these too deep this time because I'm going to mulch around these. Well, the soil in this bed's probably okay, but it's had that crop of shallots in there for a long time, so I think a little bit of compost around it might be a good idea. And as usual with these, planting quite firm. So with the planting done, I'm just going to spread a little bit of compost on the surface of this bed here, keep it in good condition. Don't need too much. They were very heavily mulched last autumn and into the winter. It's always good to keep the soil well fed. Now all they need is a good drop of water, and I'll have to cover these. I will probably put some hoops over this bed in due course because more brassicas will go in here later on, but for now I'll just cover it with a bit of enviromesh just draped over the top. It should be fine. It's just to keep the pigeons and the cabbage whites away. In a heap of wood, there's never the right bit I need. How is that possible? Oh, that will do. Well, I'll get some proper netting over this bed later, but I think that will do nicely for now. So next I've got some, well, rather sad looking chard seedlings. These have suffered a wee bit of neglect in the recent hot weather. They got a bit scorched and dry. They're recovering from that, but they don't look great. I think though, once I've got them in the ground, they're going to be a lot happier and hopefully they'll get established okay. So this bed here had peas at that end on the frames, and here was our first crop of overwintered broad beans. So I've got this planted now with beetroot, so I'm going to clear that and get the chard in there. think I'll put 3 across here. Just drop that in. They're a little smaller than I would normally plant, but they'll be okay. Well, those are undoubtedly the very worst seedlings I've produced this year, but I think they'll probably establish okay. The scorch and slug damage, they'll grow through that, and once they get their roots down in this soil, they're going to be a lot happier. I do have 8 spares which I have potted up, and I'll keep those going for a little while just in case 1 or 2 of these fail to establish, but I think after a week or 2 they're going to be looking a lot happier, at least I hope so. So when I did the direct sowing of beetroot, that was, I suppose, back in June, I did say that was going to be my last sowing of beetroot for this year, but wasn't true. I decided I wanted some more. It is such a handy crop, especially as we go into winter, and we do like it. So yeah, I couldn't resist making another rather late sowing, admittedly, but I think they'll be okay. So this is bolt hardy again, and they're looking good. Nice healthy seedlings, but I need to thin these out. So I planted a little pinch of seed in each one of these cells, and you never know quite what you're going to get, because many varieties of beetroot, including bolt hardy, are multi-germ, so you can get more than one plant from each seed. And of course I put a couple of seed in to make sure I got something, and really I don't want more than 5 plants in each cell. I think that would be plenty. So I'm just going to go through here and thin these out, and with my chunky fingers a pair of tweezers is dead handy for this job. So I'm going to thin that to, I think, 5 or maybe 6 at this stage. I can always thin a little bit more later. Yeah, that's still 7. There we go, that's 6. And get that out. What have we got there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I'll leave that for now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh dear, far too many. Take that out. Slightly tedious job this, but well worth doing, because they're not going to grow very well if you really overcrowd them. I mean, they don't mind being grown in a clump, but certainly more than 6 would be too many, I think. Oh dear, there's a lot in here. And once these have been abused like this, I will give them just a drop of water. I mean, the cells are quite wet, they've been outdoors, but that will just help settle the soil after they've had their roots disturbed. And that one there. Right, that will do. Well, they look a little bit bedraggled there after that process, but they will soon perk up, and they've got more space here to grow, so it won't be too long before I'm planting these out. Back in June I made a big sowing of a mixture of lettuce and chicory and endive and all sorts of brassicas, and well, they should be looking quite good now, but I had a bit of a disaster. It was really hot when I did that sowing, so I left the trays outside, and then we had some stormy weather, and well, those seedlings were all but washed out. It was a complete disaster. So I wrote off that batch and I had to re-sow. So because the germination hadn't been very good, thanks to the weather and my carelessness, I actually sowed the next batch in seed trays. I think that's always a good idea. If I've got some seed that I'm not having good results with in cell trays, I will sow those a little more thickly in a seed tray and then prick them out. So these are, well, you guessed it, a week or so past the point where I should have pricked them out, and I'm going to do that today. So I've got a whole mix of brassicas here in the small trays. What's this? This is dwarf green curled kale. I'm not going to need all of those plants, but I will prick out, well, quite a few and get those into individual pots to grow on. I like to get my brassicas to a decent size before I get them in the ground, and especially when we've had wet weather and there are lots of slugs around. In these slightly larger trays, I've got, well, this one is chicory, 2 different sorts of chicory, and then I've got various salad plants and endive in the other trays. So this is a bit of a chore, to be honest, but it's something I've got to get done, and these plants will then form, well, I think the majority of what is going out into the garden for the rest of this year. I will be making later sowings because there are all sorts of things I haven't sown yet. All of the oriental greens, the mustards, and I will sow some more tatsoi, and I think I want to get some more chima de rapa in the ground. But this is going to give me plenty of plants to start filling in the bare ground. So I'm going to get these into some small pots. Just fill a few of these with compost. Not too tight at this stage. Right, and then I'm going to try and tease some of these plants out. There's a fairly light compost in here, and it's nice and damp, so these should come apart fairly easily. Yes, there we go. Well, they don't have an awful lot of root on, so that is going to be quite easy to pot up. It's just a case of, well, I'll discard the small ones, then teasing the others apart, popping the roots in and firming them in. And they will very quickly get established in those new pots. And I've got so many here, and I will keep these trays, whatever's left, as spares, and then I will do more of these than I need. So at every stage I've got spare plants in case some of these don't like the transplant. They are a little bit big for this, actually. I should have done this before and when they were a little smaller. I'm surprised to find just how little root there is in these. But it is what it is. That's not a lot of root for that large leaf on the top. Next, I've got an assortment of loose leaf lettuce. I'm going to do exactly the same. Hopefully I've got a bit more root on some of these. Yeah, that's not too bad. that in, firm it in. So now on to some of the brassicas. This is a tray of cabbage. I'm going to use a slightly larger pot for these. I want to give these plenty of room. And there's quite a bit of root in here. I'm just going to separate a chunk of that. Okay, nice bit of root on that. That's going to be fine. Just gently teasing these apart. There we go. I want to pot those up to the seed leaves really. Because I'd left these too long, they've gone a little bit leggy. This is not surprising, but that's easily solved here. Well, that little job is going to keep me busy for quite a while. I've got a lot of plants there to pot up. Next time you see them, hopefully I'll be planting them out. So it's good to get started with the restocking of the garden, but that is all for this video. Thanks very much for watching, and bye for now.